All right, hi everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Learning Kitchen Live. My name is Carolyn and I'm one of the dietitians here at Community Servings. I am so excited to be with you today as we head towards the end of National Nutrition Month. Every year, National Nutrition Month is celebrated in March, and there's a different theme each year. This year's theme has been Fuel for the Future. And to me, what that means is eating in a way that's good for yourself and your health, but also good for the planet or environment. And one way that you can do both is to eat more plant foods. So today I'm going to show you how to make eggplant meatballs. It is a plant-forward dish that could be used as an appetizer or a main entree. So we're going to jump right in. To start this recipe, you're going to heat a little bit of oil over medium heat, and you're actually going to saute about, it's like 1¼ pounds of eggplant, but maybe like a medium to large size eggplant. So I've already started to heat the oil here, and we're just going to toss this on so it can start cooking. And you're going to want a big saute pan if you have it, or even like a large kind of pot at home would be good. And to help with this as well, you're going to add about 1/4 cup of water, so a little water to help with that cooking process. All right, so we're just going to let this heat up here. What you want is for it to be tender or soft, and you'll see a little bit later why we want that. So we're just going to let that cook off, and while that is going, I am going to show you how to put together the rest of the recipe. What I really like about this recipe is that it's pretty quick to put together, and it also uses a lot of pantry staples. So honestly, a lot of these things I have on hand a lot of the time in my pantry or my kitchen, and all you have to do maybe is go out and buy an eggplant or maybe a clove of garlic. All right, so we're going to let that cook. So what happens next is you're going to put into a large mixing bowl a couple different ingredients. We have some breadcrumbs. We have some grated Parmesan cheese. We have some dried oregano. We have some minced garlic cloves. We have some fresh herbs. So here we have fresh basil and fresh parsley. And I'm going to add just a little bit of black pepper. You probably don't need to add salt to this recipe just because the cheese does add a nice saltiness to it. So there's really no need to add extra salt. Plus there may be salt in your breadcrumbs depending on what kind you buy. So this is kind of the base of the recipe. We're just going to give this a little bit of a stir. We also have 1 beaten egg, and I'm going to add that at the end just so these don't get too soggy. All right, so you saw or heard today that I'm using fresh herbs. I have fresh parsley and fresh basil. That's just what I had or was available here at the kitchen. I've made this recipe at home a bunch of different ways, and I've used the dried herbs too. They come out just as delicious. So if you don't have fresh herbs, that's perfectly fine. Oftentimes you can swap in or sub the dried herbs as well. And in the recipe, which is actually going to be added to this Facebook video, I put the amounts that would be needed if you use dried instead of fresh. All right, so the eggplant's looking good. This takes about, 8 to 10 minutes for it to soften up. So we're going to let this keep cooking. And in the meantime, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about plant-forward eating and what that means. So eating more plants, there are a few different types of eating patterns or diets that this refers to. You may have heard the term vegan diet or vegetarian diet. If you're following a vegan diet, it means that you're eliminating all animal products. So meat, eggs, fish, dairy, all of that is not included in a vegan diet. A vegetarian diet or eating pattern eliminates fish and meat. It could include, though, eggs and dairy. So those are two of kind of very popular mainstream types of diets or eating patterns. And something that I like to refer to is a plant-forward eating pattern. So what this means is eating more plant foods. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're eliminating animal products, but instead the main the main focus of your meals or recipes are going to be plants. So things like fruits and vegetables, beans, legumes, lentils, nuts, and seeds are going to be at the forefront of your recipes. And what I like about this approach to eating is that it doesn't mean you have to give up meat or animal products entirely. So especially if you're someone or your family like to eat meat products, this is a great approach to take. It doesn't have to be black and white. You don't have to be a vegan or vegetarian. You can just eat more plant foods. And so this recipe today, as I said, is a plant-forward recipe. The star of this is eggplant, and we are using a little bit of cheese and eggs, so some animal products, but really we're focusing on those plant foods. So why is it important? I said this earlier. It's good for our health and for the environment to eat more plants. What are the actual benefits? Well, eating more plant foods is good for the environment because it uses less natural resources. So this is really important for the health of our planet. It uses less things like fossil fuels and energy to create or produce some of these plant foods. And in terms of our health, eating more plants has been linked to lower risk of certain diseases. So things like type 2 diabetes, stroke, high blood pressure, heart disease, obesity, and even certain types of cancer have all been linked to eating more plant foods. All right. And what I like to tell people, I kind of alluded to this earlier, you don't have to give up meat entirely to eat more plant forward. And I think that's the beauty of it. You can still have your favorite family recipes or some of your favorite dishes, but there's going to be so many benefits to adding more plant foods into your meal plans. All right, so you can see here the eggplant's starting to get a little bit softer. This recipe today, what we did was just dice up an eggplant. You want them to be in little chunk sizes. And what's going to happen once this is a little bit softer, we're actually going to put this into a food processor. A food processor is similar to like a blender. It just kind of can mix up foods a little bit easier. And so what's great about this, we're going to add it to the food processor, and then it's going to get really kind of blended and incorporated together. So for this recipe, we didn't do anything different to the eggplant. You didn't have to take out the seeds. We didn't take out the skin or anything like that. And the reason being is that the things like the skin and the seeds, they have a lot of different nutrients in there that are really, really great for us. So the texture of these might be a little different. They're going to be skin on there when we make these eggplant meatballs. If you're not a fan of it, you probably could peel the eggplant before you saute it during this step. I personally like the seeds and the skin on them, so I've never tried it before, but I think it would be fine if that's something that you wanted to modify in your own home. All right, we're just going to give this one final toss, and then it's time to really put the recipe together. All right, so I'm going to take this off the heat here. And like I said, what we are going to do is we are going to put these into a food processor. So this is what a food processor looks like. And be careful, it's going to be hot, but that's okay. You can dump it right in. Oops. For those of you who have watched before, I feel like I make a little bit of a mess in the kitchen, but that's okay. It's part of the fun. All right. And then we're just going to pulse it a few times. You may have seen recipes that if you use a food processor, it says pulse. There's actually a function on here that says pulse, but it just means combining it a few times to make sure that everything's broken up. And what I'll do too is sometimes I'll just scrape down the sides of it just to make sure that everything's getting incorporated. All right, perfect. So you can kind of see here, it is a little bit kind of blended, mashed together. There are chunks of the skin, pieces of the seeds, but that's perfectly fine because we're going to just combine this with the other ingredients. All right, so what you're going to do is just add this to the bowl. As I said, it's a little warm, so if you, I don't know, your hands are sensitive, I'm not sure, you could always let this cool a little bit. I just kind of work through it because I like to get these in the oven as quick as possible. All right, and then as I said earlier, we had that egg, so we're just going to add that in as well. All right, so then we're just going to give this a stir. until everything is pretty evenly incorporated. In terms of cooking or baking these, you actually just bake them off in the oven. So what I did a little bit earlier today was I actually preheated an oven to 375 degrees. And what we're going to do is roll these out onto a baking sheet into little meatballs. The recipe written as is, it creates about 24 meatballs, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on how big you're making them. All right, so you can see it's all coming together. All of the ingredients are here and they smell super good with the different herbs and garlic and the eggplant. Right, so what I have here is a baking sheet and we're just gonna go ahead and start rolling these. Oops, move these out a little bit. So we're gonna go out and start rolling these. So as I'm rolling them, you can kind of see here, you're just gonna put them into like little meatball sizes. And as I do this, I want to kind of just close the discussion or topic on like plant-forward eating, why it's important. I talked about it's good for our health, it's good for our planet, but like how, why? When it comes to our health, plant foods, so again, when I say plant foods, I mean fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes, beans, things like that. They tend to be higher in fiber, and they also tend to be lower in salt or sodium, and unhealthy fats. Unhealthy fats, that's typically referred to as saturated fats or trans fats when we talk about nutrition. And because these foods are higher in fiber, that can actually help with your digestive health. It can help with maintaining healthy blood sugars, and it can also help with lowering your cholesterol levels. And then in terms of like the salt or the unhealthy fats, because plant foods tend to be lower in these, they're going to be better for your heart health in general. All right. So as a great example, we talked earlier, this is the star of this dish is eggplant, right? And eggplant is full of fiber. Fiber is good for our digestive health, as I said, good for blood sugar control, and good for your cholesterol levels. And with fiber, this recipe actually has a decent amount in it. This recipe, so a serving of this is about 4 of these meatballs, and 1 serving of this recipe has 5 grams of fiber in it. And that's a pretty decent amount. On average, we want to aim for 20 to 30 grams of fiber a day. The average American eats about 12 to 15 grams. So getting about half of the amount of fiber that we really want in our diets. So a recipe like this is the fiber content is 5 grams and it's just from the meatballs alone. This doesn't even account for other veggies or other plant foods that you might add as well. All right, so what I'm gonna do, wash my hands a little bit, I'm gonna go ahead and just wash my hands under running water, and then we're gonna put these into the oven. I wanna get them baking off, and then I can roll out the rest of them later. All right, so as I said, we're gonna pop these into the oven at 375 degrees, and these are gonna cook off for about 20 to 25 minutes. All right, and because this is Learning Kitchen Live, I want to show you what a final product already looks like. I won't make you sit around. But this is what they looked like baked off. So you can see that they kind of get a little brown, caramelized. When you're cooking them, you could always flip them halfway so that they don't stick to the bottom, but they're really great choice or option. In terms of serving these, what you can do is really a variety of things. You could serve them with a sauce like I plan on doing today. You could also put them over regular pasta. You could serve them with like a little ricotta cheese. You could put them over zucchini noodles, other roasted veggies. I've done this before too as a unique thing. I've actually put them either over a salad, maybe with a little feta cheese and a Greek dressing, so like an unusual twist on a meatball, but it adds nice flavor with the eggplant. And what's great about this recipe is that you can make it ahead of time, keep it in your fridge for later in the week. Or these freeze up really nicely. So if you made a batch of them, you could actually pop them into the freezer for maybe like up to 3 months. Take them out of the refrigerator or the freezer, pop them in the fridge, let them defrost, and they'd be ready to go to just be reheated the next day. So with that, I'm going to wrap up, and I hope that you enjoyed this today. I hope that you learned something new about plant-forward eating. I hope it inspires you to add more plants to your diet or eating patterns, and I hope that you join us next week on Learning Kitchen Live. Thanks.